Good day, and thank you for joining the VMS software webinar update specific to our x86 product. We're grateful that you're able to join today, and we hope that everyone who is attending and their families and everyone who you are associated with are well this day. This is Terry Holmes, CRO of VSI. I'm pleased to let you know that we have many people who are joining today, but they're still in the process of joining, and from all over the globe. So thank you for joining, and especially for those who are joining at odd hours of the day or evening. We appreciate it and hope that you are informed by our webinar today. This webinar is being recorded and will be up on our website as soon as possible, possibly as early as tomorrow, but certainly by Monday. So if there's anything that you want to pass along to colleagues, or if you would just wish to review something from either the presentation being given or any of the questions and answer session afterwards, that's a great resource for you to use. Today our presenter is Steve Nelson, who is the Vice President of Engineering at VSI. Steve has been with the company for a little over 2 years, and in his role specifically as VP of Engineering for a little over 3 months. So we're grateful that Steve can be here today and present to us. Let me give you a little bit of his, as a way of introduction, a bit of his background. Prior to joining VMS Software, Steve served as Managing Director of R&D for Rocket Software and Director of Connectivity Software Development and IT Services for Computer Corporation of America. In previous roles before that, Steve served as Director of Software Development and several other positions within the computer industry. He has always demonstrated a successful track record for building products to bring to market in both government and commercial sectors. So we are delighted that Steve, for over 2 years now, has been part of the VSI family and is now leading the engineering effort in the company, and then specific to VSI and the x86 port. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Steve. And Steve, can you go ahead and take it away?
Thank you, Terry. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. We at VSI made some excellent strides with Openvms on x86. With our recent release of 9.1a, we are beginning to see more customers and partners move towards the x86 platform for their development and testing efforts. And we appreciate your continuing support in moving Openvms forward. As most of you are aware, we have recently released our roadmap and our projections for x86 production forward to a later date in 2022. The reasons for the move were predicated on producing a stable, robust operating system for our customers and partners. During our initial analysis of delivering 9.2, we found that there were several issues that required additional time and effort to complete. Items like clustering and hardware-related nuances that must be dealt with before we could release the operating system as a production-level product. We made this decision to move 9.2 to a later date for not only the items listed above, but for other items such as native compilers. Our native compilers are going through a rebuild process right now, which will provide VSI the flexibility to continue to develop and extend the compiler suite to meet today's standards. As most of you know, this operating system has been around, for many years. And the software code is complicated and requires a level of thought, review, and testing, which can consume a lot of time. The engineering team continues to evolve other software such as TCP/IP, OpenSSH, native compilers, and a range of other products. We continue to move towards better security, new enhancements, and additional functionality, all while streamlining our development efforts to meet the demands of our customer base. Once the release of 9.2 and 9.2.1 takes place, the operating system will be stable, reliable, and extendable for the future. And with that being said, let's begin the slide presentation. Now, our slide presentation is going to be based on an updates of what we've done to date, and we'll take it from there. So again, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today. So we're going to do 5 topics. We'll be discussing the introductions, roadmap reviews, 918 overview, look ahead, and of course, summary, and then some questions that you may or may not have. Our recent release of 918 for x86 was released at the end of September. It was a major milestone for us. Included a lot of Gen 9 and Gen 10 hardware support related components, as well as cluster support. And it was our primary focus, but there's still plenty more to do. And I'll go through that in the next couple of slides. But we've also been working on a few other things too, such as TCP/IP version 6.0 for Itanium and Alpha, as well as OpenSSH 8.7 for Itanium Alpha, and a lot of open source products, which I'll basically get into here shortly. So if you're having a chance to download 918, please feel free to do so at any time. Now a little bit about the roadmap review. As you've seen here, starting from 2020, this slide may look familiar to you. We've had limited functionality with certain select customers and partners. They were able to actually go in and try to do some development and try to port products, etc. And through that, the evolution went up all up to the first half of 2021 with the final release of 9.0. From there, we moved to the 9.1 early adoption kit come the latter half of 2021 and made it generally available to our customers and partners. During that time, we also released our 8.4.2L3 product for IA64 with various updates and enhancements. And we'll continue to keep doing that throughout the product life of the 8.4.2L3 products. We will be adding certain types of security enhancements and support going forward to that release. During that time, we basically released an update kit on July 15th, which there was another one that was actually released in August, which was our update 2 for the 9.1 release, which brought us to the actual 9.1A from September, the end of September. We will be providing another update kit come about 17th of November, around that time frame, which should have additional drivers that will support for the DL380 platform. And we will be looking at providing a field test version prior to April 2022, which is a production or a limited production release. And the reason why we're calling a limited production release is because the compilers, we need a full breadth of compilers to get to that point. A little bit more of 9.1A. 9.1A basically we did a lot of development effort and driver writing for the Gen 9 and Gen 10 with fiber channel storage arrays and smart arrays, and additional network cards. At present, we have one network card that's supported, which is the i350 chipset. And of course, Gen 9 and Gen 10 both support that. And also with the Gen 10, we are still working on the smart array interface, but we do have the fiber channel storage driver written, and it's up and running as we speak. So there's been really good progress here. However, we still got more to do, and we're hoping by the time we get ready to release the next update kit, we'll have not only the drivers for the Intel chipset, but also for the Broadcom chipset as well, which is the B5719, and of course the smart array for Gen 10. The ISO will continue to be the installation of choice, whether you're running virtual machine or whether you're using an ILO within your actual hardware device. We have more applications added to TCP/IP services, which is actually in beta form right now. We have bind, we have NTP4, and all of these have been updated to the latest and greatest, which is one of the great things that we've been working on so that things will go smoothly and updates will go smoothly as well. DHCP will be coming very shortly, and we also have OpenSSH in beta as well. We have some compiler updates, even though a lot of you have been aware of the basic compiler has been on the way. However, the testing and verification suite that we have for basic is making excellent strides, and I do believe it'll be out very soon. More layered and open source products, and I'll show that in the subsequent slides. And also 9.1 comes with an x86 licensing, which has also been preloaded, and it's good till, I believe it's July of 2022. We've made updates to the security server and associated general improvements and bug fixes, and of course, more documentation. We've done quite a bit as far as the 9.1a is concerned. So basically, we've come with a lot of layered products for 9.1a, basic compiler, cross compiler, DECnet Plus, those who are fond of DECnet, T4, of course, the DECnet printing supervisor. For 9.2, we plan on coming out with these additional layered products, providing everything goes well. DECforms is definitely one. And of course, native compilers, we're hopefully going to begin having some type of beta format come January or February timeframe. And of course, we'll be adding more as time goes on. And the same thing with our debugger likewise. Of our open source products, if you remember previously, Brett Cameron had mentioned that there were quite a few of these that were actually in red, but they're now all in green. These are actually been ported and are successfully running on 9.1a. So a lot of these, basically in green, are available now in 9.1a, or for 9.1a. As I mentioned before, OpenSSH is in beta form, and OpenLDAP is actually completed. As you can see here, we've still got a lot more to do as far as the open source products are concerned, especially for 9.1a. Ultimately, OpenJDK requires a C++ compiler as well as DECnet. So we'll need to basically continue to move C++ forward, and of course, begin to port more of these in the near future. So a little bit about looking ahead. We're going to be basically looking at a lot of different things going forward for x86, for VMS 9.x for x86, which will include more virtualization. We're actually looking right now at the Hyper-V platform as well, the Microsoft side, as well as different types of cloud deployment, interactions with more cloud-based services, perhaps maybe using backup to go to an S3 cloud service on Amazon, those type of things. We're looking at alternative hardware platforms as well, looking at more programming languages and development tools, adding more open source products and tools going forward, and of course, more services and solutions for you as the customer. A little bit about the summaries, and again, we've done a lot going forward. There's been a lot going on over the past few months. We still have plenty to do, as I'm sure you're all aware. 9.1a is out, so please feel free to download it at any point in time. An update kit will be on the way, and we'll address a few more big ticket items as well. And we're working on the new 9.2 release at the same time. We've been exclusively focusing on x86. Of course, as I mentioned before, we've a lot of open source. We've done a lot of product enhancements, new products and services, and of course, we're always thinking about life beyond 9.2 for you as well. The one thing I would like to encourage everybody to do is to watch this space, the URL down below, to keep abreast of all of what's going on in the OpenVMS world. It's been fun, very fun and exciting for me, not having come from the OpenVMS world. Specifically, I actually came from different hardware manufacturers and software developers over the years, and we've always been into OpenVMS, or basically making sure that our hardware worked with OpenVMS. But it's been very fun and exciting for me, not only to work with the current team, but also to help lead the team as well. So I appreciate everybody's time, and I appreciate everybody, any help that anybody could use or need, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll see what we can come up with for you. Okay? And from that, I'll be happy to take some questions.
So Steve, thank you very much for that. And maybe before we start addressing a few questions which have already come in, I also want to just make a quick comment and see if you'd like to respond to this. But it seems as though with a lot of the work that's going on, in open source products, there's obviously by the slides that you've summarized here, there's a lot of work going on in the open source community that we've been doing, but also some other things such as you mentioned the TCP/IP, new stack, the new release, work on OpenSSH, and it seems to me that some of this work obviously is being driven by not only x86, but also will be able to be used with current and even some older HPE license versions, so that the customers can gain some benefit there, especially as things continue to move in the world towards greater compliance and different types of compliance requirements as well as security requirements. Is that a fair statement to make?
That's a fair statement, Terry. Ultimately, what we're trying to get to, especially like with the TCP/IP stack, is the ability to address CVEs and any type of security issues going forward very quickly. We're finding that our colleagues within other operating systems are going a lot faster, and we want to be able to match that as well. We also want to be able to provide patches and fixes quicker to provide more turnaround, or quicker turnaround for our customers and partners as well. The big issue that we're working with right now for 6.0 is we're looking at a beta program to basically work with the first couple of different versions of the operating system for x86, and then eventually Alpha, which we're working on as well. And we're just looking for additional testing capabilities that our customers may be using that we cannot readily reproduce, such as large volumes of file transfers, or perhaps better security. And as we continue to keep pushing OpenSSL and OpenSSH forward, they'll also be able to address those multitude of problems as well that customers run into with something similar as security. So those are the type of things we're looking forward to, moving forward to, and also making sure that the product is stable as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. So let's open it up for some questions and answers, and I also want to invite another member of the VSI team, Camille Vanderhoven, who, as many of you may know him, Camille is based in the Netherlands. He's a senior developer here at VSI, involved in the x86 port. He's been here almost since the beginning. So Camille, why don't you say hi to everyone, and let's get started on some questions, and we can provide some answers as best we can.
Yes, well, hello from the Netherlands. I'll mainly be taking technical questions, if anyone has any of those.
Okay, let's get started. This is from John. It appears that an upgrade from version 9.1 to 9.1-A is not supported. You have to reinitialize your system disk and install from scratch. Will the upgrade process be supported from version 9.1A to 9.1 dash next and or version 9.2 in future releases?
It'll be available for 9.2, okay? It will not be available from 9.1A to 9.2, or just 9.2 at this point, John.
Let's see, a couple words, this is for Andre, a couple words about the Oracle DB. Does Oracle plan to move Oracle DB in the VMS into VMS 9.2? So I think, as always, we don't wish to speak for any other organization or supplier, and that holds true for Oracle as well. You're always best to go back to Oracle and ask those questions. But it is our understanding, or that the plan is from Oracle, that for Oracle RDB, they will support our version 9.2 and future releases 9.2-1 and future releases beyond that. That's our understanding. But again, official words should come from Oracle. Another question, is VMS software can run only on HPE only? Is there another hardware such as Dell, et cetera, et cetera? Steve, Camille, maybe you want to address that one a little bit with...
Yeah, as far as native is concerned, the answer is no, not yet, because of the drivers that we would have to write for different one of the controllers. However, in a virtual environment, yes. You could easily take a VMware and install it on a Dell server, and a 300 class, or whatever the case, maybe a 500 class, and install any of the virtual or KVM side of the house onto that system and be able to run it without a problem. We are talking to HP about a few things. We are talking to Dell, but there's nothing in concrete right now.
Maybe some additional information for future announcements and webinars.
Exactly.
From Stefan, again, this has to do with compilers. And Steve, I know on the roadmap, we talk about the C++ compiler and the availability there, but his question specifically, are Fortran and C compiler available for x86, and when will they be available? Maybe you'd like to walk through the current roadmap a bit and talk about the area of compilers.
Sure. Stefan, the plan is at this point is to get the Bliss, X macro, and C++ ready to go. We're using the LLVM front end, back end to produce what we need to produce as far as code's concerned. The answer that I'm hoping you're looking for at this point would be where they're going to be coming out next. And once the next round of compilers come out, as far as, and in probably some type of a beta format, will probably be about mid-2022, okay, which isn't too long from now. But the plan is if you look at the roadmap, you'll actually see some additional compilers on that on your roadmap that describe C, additional C++ enhancements for mostly the VEX or VMS extensions. And then others will start to fall into place. And those compilers will actually go fairly quickly once we have C++ done and a few others. So it should go relatively smoothly after that. We can offer them fairly quickly. So hope that answers your question.
Question from Don, user-written system services and dynamically loaded executive images? Question?
That would be definitely a Camille question.
I take it the question is whether we will support that on x86. The answer is yes. And in fact, we're already using user-written system services within the operating system itself. So we know that the mechanism works.
Don, if we didn't get the question right, maybe you might want to rephrase. Thanks. Question from Mark, are there any plans to reduce or eliminate the dependency towards CDD for products such as Acms or DataTree?
That's a very good question. And there has been conversations about that. Not sure if Brett Cameron addressed that last But there have been questions about that, and we are in discussions. So that's the best I can tell you at this point.
So Mark, we'll look to get back to you on that one specifically. Thank you for the question. From Ian, when will the Proliant DL380 buyer's guide be available?
Ian,
good question.
I'm definitely working on it. There's a lot of hands in the pudding, as they say, and I do plan on having something available shortly. And ultimately, the buyer's guide will be based on what we're currently working with and what we're currently testing. That's basically what it'll be between Gen 9s and Gen 10s. And also, it'll give you part numbers and everything else associated with what we've purchased and what we've been testing with. So that's basically the buyer's guide.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
We have another question about C++ and availability, but I think you've kind of addressed that, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll, unless there's something more specific, we'll move on. What is the status of satellite boot for clusters? Boot over network to MSCP, serve system disk, and will be available to host x86 boot on integrity.
Good question. That's something we'll have to get back to you, but I know we've done the initial cluster support, and we do have, as far as satellites are concerned, I'm assuming that we're talking about satellites from one end of the world to the other. That's something we haven't tested. We do have some of our 9.1A in a current cluster right now between all of our different development environments. So I would probably have to give you a little bit more on that. So if you could do me a favor and send something to Terry in the form of an email, and I'll do my due diligence to dive in and get a little bit more information for you.
Thanks, Steve. James, thanks for your question. Here's a comment about no mention of the Ada compiler. It is correct. There is no news on that. We're still, I guess, challenged to find a suitable business case for that right now. So anyone who is using Ada compilers today and you want to encourage us to advance and do some work on those, if you can help us out by providing us a business case for that, that's where we are right now. From Peter, are there any plans for a native subversion client?
Not that I'm aware of it right now, Peter. If it's something that basically becomes an issue or something that you're looking for, feel free to send an email to Terry. And ultimately, we'll take a look at it. Subversion, we have our vgit interface as well. So I know there's an actual subversion to vgit client that you can basically move back and forth if you wanted to look at something like that. That's always been available through Subversion. But feel free to reach out to Terry at this point, and he'll send me an update, and I'll take a look and see what we can do.
And to make it even simpler, if you don't have my email address, just send any questions to info, @vmssoftware.com. Several of us see those, and we can make sure you get answers to your questions in hopefully a reasonable time period. Question from Jeffrey. Delaying LLVM Fortran is a bit of a disappointment. Was decision based on usage or complexity? Again, I think, Steve, you kind of addressed this. You may want to comment in any more detail on this.
It was a little bit of both. Because of the fact that we've just upgraded to the latest LLVM, which ultimately needed some major adjustments. But once these adjustments have been made, like I said, we've got the team has been actively working on those other 3 compilers that I mentioned before. Everything else should go much smoother and much quicker. So That's been the biggest issue right now. And again, it's definitely complexity. There's no doubt about it going forward. So,
Thanks, Steve. Question from Mark: is VSI working on or planning to work on the integration of OpenVMS into third-party enterprise scheduling and enterprise backup tools?
that's a really good question. I can't really answer that right now.
I was going to say that's probably a group discussion, but that's a great question. Mark, we will respond to that question separately here. Let's see. Is there anything on how the add-on providers fit in here? Oracle for Codicil, Willow on NQ, etc. Steve, you want to make a comment about that? And I can probably comment as well, but
yeah, we're always open to other partners who want to continue to add to the products and add to our operating system. And we're always willing to basically give them a copy so that they can start developing in and working with the operating system itself. So if people such as Oracle want a copy, which they definitely can, I mean, they definitely get a copy anyways. Any other partners that want to jump on board here are more than welcome to let them do so.
I think also, again, when the company was first founded in 2014, part of the initial strategy was to look to become anything and everything for all OpenVMS customers. Obviously, we are looking to expand our capabilities now to provide customers in a lot of new ways. Which again, we'll talk more about this in probably the next webinar or the one after that. But when we talk about products or services that fit and work for you as part of your OpenVMS IT environment, those are our desires. So again, more to come on that. Let's see. Question from Jean-Marc. Do you think we have all of the prerequisites until end of 2022, or is it better to plan x86B testing in 2023? My initial suggestion to that is I would work with your local VSI key account manager. I know who this is, so I would work with them specifically on this, and then they will bring in the technical resources. But for many folks, that may be a logical path to plan. Steve, any comment?
At the same time, Terry, there's a lot that can be done now.
Yeah.
Prior to the move. So in other words, you can basically work with cross compilers. You can start compiling some of your tool sets and some of your applications that you run, and ultimately try them on 9.1a. When 9.2 comes out, do the same, and so on and so forth. So the cross compilers are fully functional compilers, but they basically just translate into x86 or ELF code. So feel free that you can start that process now if you like, and then come 9.2 and 9.2.1, make that decision of, okay, you know what, I don't need maybe the native compilers right now because the cross compilers are working just fine. Okay, and my applications are working just fine. And you may want to put them through some testing during that time too. So once you get to that point, you'll know what you want to do.
Thanks, Steve. Let's see. I don't see NetApp listed on supported storage list. Is there any plan to support NetApp in the future for integrity in x86 versions?
Let's see.
I don't know about that one.
Well, NetApp has multiple interfaces. So in other words, NFS, SMB, and several other interfaces as well, as far as storage is concerned. So not sure if there's going to be a native issue at this point. However, if you do have some type of a system that has virtual and you're going against a NetApp storage, let's say it's mounted on a Linux file server, or basically mounted file system, I'm sure that your virtual machine will be able to share that as well. But I'm not sure right now if we're going to have anything to do. Matter of fact, we haven't even been approached by NetApp to do anything. But if we do, we'll let everybody know.
Okay, so Ernie, you may want to maybe get a little bit more specific, but reach out to us separately. Thanks, Steve. Something from Anthony. If my development is on x86, will the migration to my production environment on Integrity be seamless? I'll let the two of you answer that question.
So I guess, Anthony, you want to go from x86 over to Itanium. There's no reverse.
I think he's talking about the opposite, Steve.
Okay. Okay.
Just the question was phrased in a certain way. I think he's
if you're using the cross compilers, yes, the answer is yes.
Camille, any additional comment?
Well, yeah, in most cases, we aim to make it seamless. If you're doing something that's a little bit more special than most user applications, you may run into some of the architectural differences. But for most people, that is unlikely.
Anthony, my suggestion is as the time gets closer and for planning purposes, probably best that we have a conversation about that. We can have either the folks, Steve or Camille, or others involved in that conversation, so we can help in your planning. But thank you for the question. Another statement / question. I'd be interested to know if there's going to be any native VLAN support at the OS level in the new stack, as it's currently stopping us implementing granular security and management. This is from Rob.
That's a good question. We're going to have to get back to you on that.
Okay. All right, we'll make a note and get back to him on that. Can we have updates on partner deliveries, i.e. Connex and IBM MQ as well, please? This is from Jeffrey. Jeffrey, again, I think it's always best to reach out to those software partners of VSI with such questions directly. These types of issues and questions we will probably be looking to address in more detail as we can in either the next webinar or the one after that. Okay, question from Helen. I'd be interested in a cheaper desktop bare metal hardware option for software development, even if it's too small for a quote production environment.
Well, Helen, you can also just load up Rocky Linux with a virtual machine on that cheaper hardware, and you can run Openvms on that.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay. Make sure, by the way, it's on an Intel, not an AMD.
Good point. Important point. There's a question, this has come up a couple times. It basically has to do with the roadmap changes. Will 9.2 be the first available as part of the community license program, or will it be a later version? We are focused right now on the production versions, whether it's the limited production version or the production version itself. That's our first focus right now, and I'm not sure if the community license program will be a version 9.2-2 or whatever, but that's the pecking order of where it's at presently, and that's a couple questions on that. Question from James on 9.2-X. The comment is needs to be office friendly server. Only rack mounts on roadmap today. Can VSI please look at something like an ML350 for production release? Steve, I'll defer to you on that.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we can think about at some point. And again, the nice thing about some of the HP systems is they have fairly standard cards, and I'm being a little bit cautious about this, but the chipsets are fairly straightforward. So if that comes available and we can basically do something easily, sure. But if not, you can still run a simple KVM or VMware to basically get you up and running for the time being.
From John, VMS on Atom, how is that going? I think this is a similar question maybe to the last webinar, and the statement is, and when can you take my money?
Well, I have a Swiss account someplace. If you want to deposit some money into that, that'd be great.
Be careful, Steve. This is on a recorded line. I think it's safe to say that the Atom project is certainly on the list. We have a pretty healthy list, and it's on the list. I'm not sure we really have a specific update. Again, this is one of the things that will probably come up in the next or the next to next webinar down the road. John, we'll make sure we keep you in the loop on this. If nothing else for Steve's bank account. From Hans, do you have some sort of cookbook how to configure 2 VMware virtual machines to use shared disks? Sorry.
We do, but it's not published. If you don't mind some development isms in some of this stuff, I will reach out to Terry and maybe, excuse me, get a copy of that to you. But it's fairly straightforward. One of our developers, Dick Stockdale, excuse me, put something together because he had done a lot of work on that as well. So if it's of interest, reach out to either Terry or info, and we'll see if we can get you something. But again, it's not going to be document quality. Okay, it's just going to be basically notes.
Yeah, Steve, we know Hans, so we can certainly, if that's available, we can certainly provide that to him.
Great.
Let's see. When can VSI provide a template/sample for an x86 user written driver?
Good question.
Steve, this audience only asks good questions.
Currently what we have, I have quite a few college students working in the group right now. And what they've been doing is looking at the driver. There's an actual book put out by a former digital person. And they've been using that to begin writing drivers and understanding those drivers. As far as putting something together, we would have to basically look at what we could do and ultimately provide wrappers around it so that it makes it seamless for you as well. But it's not something we are doing right now, but something we can probably think about in the future.
Okay, here's a comment, really more of a comment from John, but let's see if we agree. I would suggest you move to get on DL380 Gen 10 Plus in the queue for testing, since by the time version 9.2 is ready, that will be the HPE platform of choice. I think we agree with that statement.
Yes, we do. Matter of fact, it's in my budget for next year to purchase one.
Yeah. Question from Howard. Do you intend to provide a hardware compatibility test tool to run prior to attempting installation?
Say that one more time, Terry, please.
Yeah. Do you intend to provide a hardware compatibility test tool to run prior to attempting, I'm assuming for customers, prior to attempting installation?
Well, we
Top
do
of my
have
head. Go ahead,
sorry.
Camille.
We do have a limited tool that makes sure that the processor in your system has all of the necessary features needed to run VMS, which is really useful in a virtual machine environment, because on a virtual machine, we pretty much know that we support the basic devices on that machine. And then if your CPU is compatible, we're pretty sure that we can run VMS on that virtual machine. We do not have a tool that then checks all the hardware in the system and makes sure that we have drivers for that, but that may be something we can think about in the future.
Thanks, Camille. Next question regarding clustering. In a mixed environment, will OpenVMS software support Itanium, Alpha, VMware /9.1a, Proliant 380 in a mixed cluster environment?
Yeah, it definitely will. I mean, if you look at the previous slides, hold on for a second, let me go back a few.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I'll go back a few. Hold on. There we go. As you can see here, we have quite a few things, including 1H1, 84, 1H1, 2L3, a lot of 2L2s, and of course we don't have a 2L1 right now. But yeah, it runs basically 9.1 and 9.1a will run in a multi-version cluster. So we haven't tested out 7.x because we don't have a version of 7.x as far as I'm aware of. But all of the 8.4s, yes.
Thanks, Steve. Is it possible to launch VSI OpenVMS version 9.x in a VirtualBox started on a Mac server?
As long as it's the Intel chipset and not the M1, the answer is yes.
Okay.
We have it running in VBox. We have it running. Of course, we don't consider VBox a production-ready virtual system. More of KVM and VMware at this point. Excuse me. We also, by the way, have it running on Fusion, VMware's Fusion, and a couple of other VMware products.
Any plans to offer a, quote, test drive, unquote, capability where customers can drop an application onto a VSI test site to compile, link, run their app to test?
That's a good question, too. I know we've done that in the past with some of our partners, and it's something we could look at for the future. We just may do something like that in a cloud service.
Certainly seems like a great idea, yeah.
Yeah.
On the release of 9.2, let's see, I guess, will it be supported on VMware ESX platform?
Yes, right now in the Enterprise edition, there is a serial issue, basically serial port issue, which is not supported on lesser other than Enterprise versions. And we're looking at providing a USB or interface at some point for this anomaly. So yes, the Enterprise, we currently have ESX 6.7, I believe, with recent updates. And it is running on a DL580. This is what VMware is running on currently right now. It's running on DL580 with numerous virtual machines right now. And it's running quite successfully.
Going back to the compatibility checking tool, AKS, is it possible to get the VM compatibility checking tool as discussed?
I believe it's on the website. Check the website in the 9.1 area and see if it's there. If it's not there, then just reach out to info and we'll get you something.
Yeah, and yeah, we know AK as well, so yeah, we'll
Yes,
make a note of
the
that.
checking tool is a Python script that you can run on the host system. And it should be available along with the download for the operating system itself.
Okay, thanks, Camille. Will there be a set of generic drivers to get OpenVMS started on older DL380 systems?
Not at this moment. However, a lot of the controllers on the Gen 8s have similar qualities, but something we're not testing right now and not looking into. It's basically the Gen 9, the Gen 10, and of course the Gen 10 Plus. But no, there's no generic drivers right now that we know that can actually satisfy those.
From Eric, is it possible to create a cluster with a VAX 7.3 version?
We haven't tried it, but I don't see any reasons why it shouldn't.
We'd love to hear it if you get it running.
Please.
Okay, so we'll let's make a note. This is specifically to Eric. Eric, maybe you can send us a note on that. Thank you. Are there any sorry, go ahead.
If you don't mind, I'd like to get back to the idea of running on older Proliants. The main issue with older Proliants isn't drivers, it's the fact that they do not support UEFI hardware. That means we cannot run natively on the older Proliant systems, but we can run on them in a virtual machine.
Good point.
Thanks, Camille. Are the login out utilities on x86 the same as on Integrity?
Say that one more time, Terry, please.
Yeah, are the login out utilities on x86 the same as on Itanium or Integrity?
I believe so. I don't think anything has changed. We're trying to make,
Yes, they are the same.
forward compatibility.
Camille, did you say that they are? Or
Yes, they are.
okay. Okay. Are there significant differences in loading and reloading Xcelets in the x86?
Execlets. No, there are no differences. No significant differences.
I knew there was something I was going to mispronounce. Thanks, Camille. Will there be a white paper on the various floating point formats on x86?
No, but there will be on the calling standards.
Yeah, it's good to note that we're not we're supporting IEEE and VAX floating point formats on x86, and those aren't really different between x86 and Itanium.
Okay. Somewhat in the future, but is it even planned to support the format of Microsoft documents in VSI's x86?
Are we talking about the standard help documents?
I'm not sure, to be honest, Steve. Let's assume that we are.
I mean, because Microsoft comes in multiple flavors, such as XML, the standard help functionality, in multiple formats that they support right now, including the ODT format. So if we get a little bit more specific on that, we can let me know.
Okay. That's from Alexander. From Warren, any progress on completing the development of USB disk capability to include the use of clustering, shadowing, etc.?
We are looking at that right now. We're looking at to support USB disks, as along with a multitude of other 2.0 and 3.0 capabilities. Matter of fact, we'll be having a meeting here shortly to discuss that process.
Will there be an Openvms x86 internals and data structures manual available at some point in the future?
Yes, it will be. Yes. We know that's one important, especially for some of the people who've done some low-level kernel, dealing with ASTs, etc. So that is definitely on the radar.
Are there any documents describing the differences between IA64 or integrity and x64 object format?
That's a good question. I'm going to have to find out. I believe there is a document, but I believe it's fairly sparse, but I don't know how in-depth it is right now.
Peter, we'll try to get back to you on that. Thank you for the question. Does x86 Openvms take advantage of hyperthreading?
No, not at the moment. However, we still have our SMB support for multiple CPUs.
And let's see, another comment / question about the speeds of Ethernet increasing rapidly. What are the plans for better support in VMS for Iscsi?
That's a good question. As far as speed for Ethernet, we have two additional drivers coming out here shortly, which will address the 10 gig and the 20 to 40 gig barrier. But as far as Iscsi is concerned, I'm not sure if that's something we can do in our, we're also working on a parallel virtualization driver as well. If that's something that can be addressed in that, it's either blocking or network based. So
John, we'll have to get back to you on that probably on a future webinar. Any plans to allow a paid source listings subscription?
not at the moment, no.
Hadn't thought about that one. If VMS doesn't take advantage of hyperthreading, does that mean hyperthreading needs to be turned off on a VM host?
Right now, yes.
HPE tape libraries are not aging as well as alpha servers or integrity servers. Is there any work going on to add support for additional vendors' tape libraries or virtual libraries, such as the EMC data domain VTL to Media Robot utility or MRU?
Native drivers for it, not at the moment. However, again, if it's in any type of virtual environment and it's already supported, then we'll end up using it somehow, some way, and I'm not sure about what that is yet. We haven't even got to the point where we've been able to test native LTO drivers or any ETL tape drivers in either scenario at this point. So, but it is something that we are definitely going to be looking at going forward.
Bill, please keep that question in your back pocket. Don't be afraid to ask it again. We've made a note about that. So if there is some new development, we'll try to reach out to you. Thank you. Okay, looks like we've gone through several questions. Let's do a little follow-up here, Steve, to your answer about hyperthreading needs to be turned off.
Yeah, let me do a little bit more follow-up on that as well. But at the last we had worked with one of the virtual machines, and I can't remember which one off the top of my head. it was a hyper-threading issue that we had to basically shut off. And I'll just follow up and I'll let you know as well.
Okay, Ron, we'll look to get you a more detailed answer on that. A response from Steve and team. Let's see, when will Acme be available?
It's funny, we just had that discussion just recently, and I'm going to say off the top of my head, which again may be short here, memory-wise, I believe sometime in the beginning of 2022, but let me double check on that.
Okay. And Steve, if you don't mind, maybe, again, still getting some questions about some of the different compilers. So this specific one kind of encapsulates a few of them about clarifying the expected time frame for availability of the basic cross compiler and then the native compiler.
As of last week, the compiler team made significant progress going forward for the basic cross compiler. They're able to complete 80% of their tests, and it looked really good, hopefully by the end of this month. But I said that in being cautious, by the end of this month, if not by November timeframe.
Okay, you heard it here first, folks. Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
I saw deck forms on the list of products. What about FMS? I thought that was.
I thought that was all reported as well, and I thought it was up and running. But let me double check on that.
Yeah. Camille, would you happen to know?
I'm pretty sure I saw it on one of the two lists, but it's definitely. I think we've already got FMS, but I'm not 100% sure.
That's what I thought too. All right, Anthony, we'll get back to you on that.
And there's also another place. If you click on the website and go to the 9.1 menu drop down below on the very bottom are, I think there's 3 different boxes. In those boxes, if you click on them, there's a drop down, and it shows exactly what's been ported to date and what's currently available. So spend some time and going through the website and take a look at that as well.
Thanks, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't see any other specific questions for today, and we've gone just slightly over the allotted hours. So I am always impressed on these webinars. First of all, that the number of attendees is impressive, but also the fact that the attendees stay throughout all of the Q&A. I mean, the vast majority of people are still on this call, so it just shows the level of interest, and we very much appreciate that. If it hasn't been said before, we'll say it again. So thank you very much for attending today's webinar. As mentioned earlier, this will be up on our website, hopefully tomorrow, but certainly we hope by Monday, so you can view it or share it with others in your organization or others who are just interested. And we look forward to the next webinar, which will be scheduled soon. And again, it will probably be talking about some of the side benefits from the work that's going on in the x86 port to some of the things that may be applicable to you today, as well as tomorrow. So thank you again. We appreciate it. Appreciate your attendance, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Camille, for your participation. I know that people, I'm sure they got a lot out of it. So thanks again, and take care, and have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.